There you go.
Came out here first.
Well, that's the good thing about going second.
All right.
Get to eat.
So that's right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
The honor of the visit.
That's right. I remember doing a little babysitting for David on the weekend. Hanging in there. So you walk on it. This is the guy I got a lot for. I love the office. This is their future. It's like less pressure time, but I count these. Everyone. Dwindled. He's the one that's getting on. So anyway, we hold the number, and I tried to retire. Last life. No, we got down. So you're on the 35th floor of the building. I read about your program.
Yeah, so we still do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like your glasses.
I was glad we can do.
Hello, Fred.
I love that t-shirt.
That's your So you, Fred's maybe the last time. So I think we get to bring up the make our. You'll go get a street here from downstairs to show up late.
I was thinking, negotiating.
Yeah, I think there's some people who have to leave.
Oh, you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just find that like because your high school birthday.
Philip's name up there.
I am very lucky.
I'm almost there.
Leave as much time as you can for Roger Rush, because I think you'll have lots of.
You don't need to paper to ball up and put in your wallet and throw out. Yeah. But I think I better remind you. I think you're the last person. Well, I mean, that's great. Yeah, it's not.
I don't know.
No, that's true. Okay, so. I was.
Friends or no, good afternoon.
It's morning, right?
You been there?
We're going soon. Richie, anything under control? I don't know about that. Don't tell anybody, they might think it is. Exactly. Who let that guy in? You should meet somebody. I don't know. Welcome back. I mean, I didn't mean a visitor.
Maybe visiting.
I was told to start early. I don't like to start early. Everybody's. Really want to meet here.
Good afternoon. I've been told to start early. I'm trying to behave, do it right. So, Christina, you gonna lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, Jenny. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. I got to thinking about cycles. Rotary has cycles. Bill may have been installed in July, but September is when we get in gear, you know, and that starts the cycle. Normally, this would be Rosh Hashanah week. And it would have been easy when Phil said, "Will you do the middle of September?" I would have been, "Oh, good, I've got a great, link to an invocation." However, this is the year that we add a month to the calendar. So FYI, Rosh Hashanah is in October. But those of us who pay attention are already thinking September, we're thinking Rosh Hashanah. So I love coming to Rotary and hearing speakers, today no exception, learn so much, things I didn't know. So you ready for this? In Judaism, there's not a leap day, there's a leap month. Not only is there not a leap month, but it occurs 7 times in 19 years in what's referred to as a metonic cycle. Namely, in years 3, 6, 8, 11, and 14. Okay, there'll be a quiz next week, so I hope you memorize that, or you watch the video, but I'll do it again, 3, 6, 8, 11, and 14. Those years you skip. Now, the cycles of events that come in our lives. Cycles are best when they're shared and when they're shareable. For instance, my birthday, I'll share with a few people, but it's definitely shareable. Anybody who wants to wish me happy birthday can go ahead and do it. Same thing with anniversaries. Same thing with the golf tournament. We share it with the people we go with, but it's shareable. Good stories, we talk about it. 100th anniversary, same thing. We'll share it together, but it's a shareable story. Last night, there was an eclipse of the full moon. Couldn't see it here, but there were places where there was an eclipse of the moon. And then coming up is Rosh Hashanah. And those two things are what got me thinking about cycles. Some overlap for all of us, some are individual. Rosh Hashanah, January 1st. My birthday, Elisa, my anniversary. There is a series of cycles that we all follow. The daily cycle, get up every morning. The weekly cycle, we all have a weekly cycle. The monthly cycle, one way or another, the months fall into cycles. Seasonal cycles, the annual cycles, the cycles of a lifetime. Have a good one.
Gee, Rotary cycle, we get a new president of the year.
Okay, time for sunshine report.
Mr. Sunshine, we have a card here for Mike Lowen. And we'll pass it around.
Why? What's going on tonight?
His sister-in-law died.
Yeah,
Wife died now, his sister, like hormones.
No. Which sister? Which sister-in-law?
Asked,
Melinda's sister.
Really? Yes. Not anymore.
you need announcements?
We're getting there. You have an announcement for us?
Is it?
Go ahead, tee it up.
I'm not gonna move to the front of the room, but I wanna walk that one. That's for celebrity. So I want to share with you, last Friday, our service committee, our international service committee, as you're well aware, we're very active. We have a lot of fun, we do a lot of good for people around the world. We met with one of our fantastic donors in person, face to face, who came from India. He came to meet us, of course, not really. He just happened to be on business. This is Dr. Reddy Labs, who's on the stock exchange. And this was one of Father's buddies. He told a few stories. Gotta know more about the two-wheeler trips. But anyway, this was their one of their secretaries, vice president, way up in the company. He's the guy who, upon talking to Bob and Zooming with us several months ago, gave our project over the last 3 years, $260,000. I mean, from their company. And we've got a commitment from them for $350,000 for the program of scale that we just have. Those of you that are looking for something to do in Rotary, and you might be kind of bored, talk to us about joining our committee. We have great committee meetings. We'll tell you about them, you'll have to come and find out. And we meet some fantastic people. And then 5 of us, including Boba, we're going to be going to India in December to see the opening of our school. So, you know, it's there if you want to take advantage of it. I have one thing to tell all of you. What's really important in Rotary, just show up.
Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So as part of our 100th anniversary celebration, we have decided to make a short film about our club and what we do, our impact in the community, a little bit about the history. And so I helped assemble a team of filmmakers and videographers. Some of them will be familiar to you. Some of you may remember Jesus Nava, who was in our club for many years. After returning from government, he took up a career as a filmmaker and actually does this as paid work, but he is volunteering for us out of the goodness of his heart, so you will see him around. And then we have Laura Pankova, who's actually one of our scholarship students, and she is majoring in film. So natural to have her helping out. And then another week, you will meet another film student from UC Berkeley named Brian Fan. He is actually not a Rotary Scholar, but I know him through another nonprofit. He's also helping. So this team of 3 will be filming at our golf tournament on September 30th. And there will be 2 days here at Rotary, the 16th and 23rd of October, where they will be doing some filming at the meeting, some filming after the meeting. We're gonna put together a little group montage where we all say, you know, like go Burlingame Rotary and stuff and film that. So more details coming soon, but a big thanks to them because it's going to be a time-consuming project, but hopefully very worthwhile. Besides showing the film at our celebration in January, we will also make an extra short version for those with short attention spans that we can use for marketing the club to the general public. And then I have one more guest to introduce, another scholarship student, Mary Rose Kenneth, and she is actually going to be presenting shortly. Did you want to lead into that now, or do we have more announcements? Okay,
We have
great,
more announcements.
perfect. I'll give you the microphone. Hi, everybody.
I'm so excited to be here. I am Mary Rose. I'm a Rotary Scholar. I graduated Burlingame High School in 2022. So I'm going into my 3rd year at UC Davis. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what I've been doing with your money.
You were wondering.
Yeah. Where do I- Okay. So just a little bit about my college application process. Both of my parents are Irish immigrants, so I am a first-generation American, and then a first-generation American college student. So coming into the college application process, it was a little bit stressful. Didn't really know what I was getting myself into, and my parents didn't really either. I mean, they went to school, but not here, and the process is very different. In Ireland, it's like a 3-year college program. They kind of cut out all of the general eds, all of that, and they get you straight to your degree, and they get you out in about 2.5 or 3 years, as opposed to here, we're looking at 4, 4.5, sometimes 5. Also, there's a lot more colleges in America than there are in Ireland. And that was a big part of my choice as well. Was initially when I started the process, I was like, I'm going to New York, I'm going to Boston, I'm going so far away, want to get out of here. Quite quickly, I changed my mind. And by the time that I had applied to, submitted my last application at the end of January, I was set on UC Davis. I really, really wanted it. And excitingly, I did. Part of the reason for choosing was because I have 2 siblings here. One of them just graduated Burlingame High School, and then one is a junior there, and I wanted to be close to my siblings. I'm close to them. We're a very close-knit family, and I wanted to be able to come back if I wanted to see them. The other part of it was that I actually have a set of cousins in Sacramento, and I wanted to be close to them. So really, it came down to my family. But I'm so happy with the choice. That was how I ended up at UC Davis. What did oh, there we go. Okay. So I'm studying biomedical engineering, and I recently added a minor in mathematics. The math minor was kind of just for fun. I took a lot of calculus, and I decided I wanted to take more. So that's what I'm doing with that. But the biomedical engineering, I chose when I was a senior in high school. We did a biotechnology unit, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. We did a gene editing lab. Wasn't all that exciting, but I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to see where I can go with this. So I just finished, I haven't done much biomedical engineering. I just finished all of my physics and my calculus and my chemistry, my biology, and I'm going into my physiology, my protein engineering, my biotransport, things like that. So I'm really excited for the upcoming year, upcoming next 2 years. And the way it works at UC Davis as an engineering major is that in your senior year, you do a year-long design project for biomedical engineering. It's usually a medical device, and there's 6 clients that we get to choose from to pick a medical device. At the Senior Design Expo last year, I looked at electroshock therapy for horses, prosthetics for dogs. There was a needle that prevented blood from coagulating when you're taking blood samples. It was really, really cool. So that's not this year, but in the upcoming year, my senior year at UC Davis, that's what I'll be focusing on, and I'm really looking forward to that opportunity as well. So at UC Davis, I have two jobs. One of them is paid, one of them is not. My paid job is a public advisor. It's technically under the Department of Undergraduate Admissions. This is the building I work in, the UC Davis Welcome Center. And there's two tasks that I have that are split. One of them is sitting at the front desk, greeting people as they come in for tours, if they have any questions after their tour about the application or the requirements of the process or anything like that. The other is in a back office in a call center where people can call during the week at any time, and there's a team of public advisors there to answer any questions, again, about the application process, specific transfer requirements, specific freshman requirements, if there's any complications with their application. We are the team to help. And I really love that line of work. I think it's given me a much deeper understanding of what UC Davis looks for in its applicants, what its values are as a university, and that's really helped me kind of feel like grounded in my place there, because I know what they're looking for in people, and I'm definitely seeing that in the students that are at UC Davis and my friends and my peers. The other thing that I started this summer was work in the Simon Lab. Dr. Simon is a professor at UC Davis of biomechanics, and he works specifically in inflammation biomechanics. So over the summer and coming into the next quarter, I will be studying white blood cells with him and inflammation, and how that relates to psoriasis in particular, because the white blood cells are what cause the psoriasis reaction on the skin. And so we're looking at, without getting too science jargony on you, the chemical pathways. It's a multi-step pathway to cause that reaction of psoriasis, and blocking different steps has different results. So we're looking at, can we measure the level of activation, inflammation, and then how can we use that knowledge to target different steps of the pathway and help treat psoriasis. So I started that this summer, and I will be continuing that in the next quarter as well. The other thing that I do, that's maybe my favorite thing that I do at UC Davis, is I play club water polo. I've been playing water polo since I was 11. I played at Burlingame Aquatic Center, and then I played at Burlingame High School. And one of the things I was looking for actually in picking a college was the opportunity to play water polo. I didn't want it to be too serious. I did not want to go NCAA, but I really like having a team around me. And I found that the people who play water polo tend to be a really great group of people. And I definitely found that at UC Davis. This is like two team pictures for you. This was a team dinner at a fundraiser that we were doing. That was after a tournament at Cal Maritime. And then this middle picture is actually me with my Burlingame High School goalie. We played together for 4 years, and she's now playing club at Chico State. So not only have I been able to make new friendships through the team, I have actually been able to maintain old friendships with old teammates as well, which is incredible. So as we look to the future, I have 2 more years, as I mentioned, at UC Davis. After that, I hope to get a master's degree in biomedical engineering. And then I would like to go into industry, something in biotech. I like the Bay Area. I like living in the Bay Area. I've been here my whole life. There's a lot of biotech jobs here, and I would love to be able to stay here and work. The other option that I'm thinking about is maybe teaching mathematics. I really, really like math, and I really liked my math professors. I think they've done a lot for me. Been some of the most helpful and supportive faculty I've found at UC Davis, and I would love to maybe be able to do that in the future as well. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been up to for the past 2 years. Yeah, and thank you guys again so much for having me here.
Thank you, Mary Rose. I don't think we know when you sleep, but we do know that for fun you do calculus and you're interested in prosthetics for dogs and electric shock therapy for horses and a long list of other science topics.
Jeez. Jennifer, you took math for fun.
Yeah.
What sort of parties do you go to?
The water polo one.
All right, I think I'm done. So are there other announcements? Okay.
Visiting Rotarians? Not visiting past Rotarians. How about visiting the past Rotarians? No, talk to us. What? Talk to us.
Yeah, say a few words about what you've been up to. I'll give you the microphone instead of just introducing you.
It's nice to be back. In May, I was here, you were downstairs, and then climbed the stairs to come back. I can't remember, if it was- I was president in the nineties, we were talking about Edogawa, when we did start that third line. I ran, Rodney was involved, in that, Carol was involved, in that. We had a good time, I worked with Jennifer and Mike on, student, scholarships. And, had a great time, a lot of good memories, I'm happy to be back here.
Thank you. So Mike was talking about, Mike? Joe, I'm sorry. Since Joe was talking about Edogawa, wanted to say that my wife and I were in Tokyo last Saturday night and had a delightful dinner and karaoke with our wonderful friends from the Edogawa Club. And this summer greetings, so it was great fun. Thank you. Jay, Doug and karaoke.
So this is the segment. Don't miss this. What are we talking about? The Rotary Magazine. So as I mentioned last month, I became aware of the fact that I pick it up and I put it down, and some months I look at it. And so I decided that for this year, my Rotary, what was your term? Be there, stand up, whatever. No, whatever term Bob used. I would like to monthly highlight the Rotary Magazine that you might go home before it disappears and pick it up. If everybody in the club picked up the magazine and read a particular article, which I'm gonna highlight, I think it'd be good for the club, I think it'd be good for Rotary. I think it'd be good for our relationships that we have. We might even come back and say, hey, I looked at an article in the Rotary Magazine, that would be cool. So, Rotary for September, it has on the front, Calgary Calls, so I do want to mention that, the international conference is in Calgary, so think about it. But I want to highlight the article that caught my eye. Big print, our world. Little print, if it's broken, fix it. Okay, we're still in the Rotary theme. This is all about Rotary, our world, if it's broken, fix it. What's this about? This is about repair cafes. I'm not going to say too much, but these are places where you take things like, I don't know, microphones, a gadget, whatever, and they fix it. And the article will tell you why they're doing that, how it benefits our community. So pick it up, read it, because it's very much about the Rotary theme of our world. If it's broken, fix it. But this is a very specific application that you wouldn't know about if you didn't read the Rotary Magazine. No, don't miss it.
Thank you. Okay, Al. I didn't know you had a brother. I've got a few of them. Is this on? Is this working? There we go. It's working. What? Well, I have the distinct pleasure today of introducing my brother, which is why we joke about others. Before I do that, though, I do want to thank Roger for changing the schedule and agreeing to meet with us today. I appreciate it very much. And when I asked him last week if he wanted to speak, I forgot today's his birthday. Well, a little bit, yeah, I can go there. I won't take a lot of time. Just want to, he's going to talk about his experiences being a cancer survivor over the past year and a half. Before I get into that, though, just a brief background on him. He is an attorney with the practice in Menlo Park, Palo Alto, Silicon Valley. In his own practice for a number of years, won a number of national awards. He's been quoted in a lot of different journals, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Newsweek, you name it. He was a tax attorney in venture capital, dealt with a lot of international law, dealing a lot with China in particular. He has written a couple different books. I think one of them is called Dead on Arrival, which are issues that startup companies have. And I think I read or heard that Forbes, they listed it as the #1 business book for like 3 years in a row when it first came out. So he's a pretty accomplished guy. But from a personal perspective, he's the last guy any of us that knew him would think would ever get well. This guy is a fanatic on fitness. He runs marathons for athletes. He climbs mountains. He does kayak races, bike races. He does it every weekend, even the day. He's a guy that watches his diet. He's been on a plant-based diet for a number of years prior to being diagnosed. He is a guy that knows his body signals. He monitors. In fact, if you look at him now, go out the devices on his body that tell him sugar level, blood pressure level, you name it. He monitors on a regular basis. And in our family, he's a guy we thought would live to be 100, and he might still live to be 100. We hope so. But he's the last guy you think would get cancer. But the other thing I want to tell you about him is that if he wasn't who he was, I don't think he'd be with us today. Because he's a guy that not only monitors his body, knows his signals, and knows when something's off, even when the doctor's dim. But he's also incredibly persistent. When he was a kid, he used to bug me, he was so annoying. Because he always wanted to learn about anything. He would research anything. And when he got cancer, one of the things that I took away was how in depth he got in trying to understand what caused it, why he got it, what he could do, what experimental treatments are. For fun, he reads these research science novels on different therapies in cancer. In fact, his doctor at Stanford, who's the same doctor that treated Steve Jobs, made a half joke that he says, I think you, Roger, probably know more about leading edge techniques and therapies than I do. Because he reads it and follows up, he takes responsibility for his career and for his life. And so I think you'll find his experience with the U.S. medical system incredibly entertaining. Starting from the date that when his first diagnosis was wrong, I don't think I'm still in the thunder, until he gets a call late on a Friday night that said, hey, we're sorry, we misdiagnosed you. It is nothing. It's not just a mass of nothing. It's actually highly malignant. You need to see a cancer doctor like tomorrow. And so starting from that all the way through to today, he should not be here. I think at the best, the doctors gave him a 1.5 years to live, which would have expired in May. But he's cancer-free today. So Roger, floor is yours.
Thanks, Al. It's quite an introduction. Definitely hired. So, first of all, that was really great, this presentation earlier about Davis. And, you know, I hope you do battle inflammation, because that is a driver of a lot of different diseases with just a characteristic. So, as Al said, today is my birthday. I normally, my 65th birthday, actually. And I normally don't, up until recently, I didn't really think about that, didn't really care about it. Some years I forgot about it. I'll tell you, after a couple doctors tell me you're not likely to have another birthday, it becomes more important. So yeah, it's a big deal for me. Today's a big deal. And what I hope to do today in the next 15-20 minutes, I want to tell you about my experience, tell you about what I learned, and maybe I can give you something that might be helpful to some of you. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a doctor, not a scientist, not a researcher, just a lawyer, okay? And I don't pretend to know what I don't know, but I have learned a few things, and I want to share those with you. Let me start with my story, because even though I'm not any of those, I'm not a doctor, I am entitled to my story. So I want to tell you how things happen for me. For many years, again, I live in Silicon Valley, and I hear about technology. I have biotech clients. For many years, I've been hearing about liquid biopsies, blood tests for cancer. And every year I go in for a physical and I'd say, hey, doc, how about that blood test for cancer? And year after year, there's no such thing. And even if there is, it doesn't work. And even if it did, you don't have any symptoms. So no, I'm not going to order that. And one day I was sitting on an airplane reading a book by Tony Robbins and Pete Diamandis. And he mentioned the Gallery test by Grail. And I folded the page over and I wrote a big star, and I circled it, sent myself an email, and I said, I'm going to get that. And for no reason other than I just wanted to check boxes. And just part of the fact that the same day I got that test, I think I got a hearing test. By the way, be happy to know my hearing is fine. Anyway, so I ordered it up and it was a real challenge to get the test because my doctor refused to order it. You gotta get a doctor to order this. I went to a second doctor who also refused to order it. Finally, Gallery found me a telemedicine doctor who, in Cleveland or someplace, who ordered it. They came to my office. It took 10 minutes. I didn't even stop typing. I was working on an email while they drew the blood. And a week later, they called me up and I knew it was bad news because they called me, they didn't email me. The doctor that called me and asked me, said, so he asked me a question I kept hearing again and again after that. Why did you take this test? And I said, I was, no reason, you know, because most people will wait till they have symptoms. But I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have any idea. I didn't have no clue. Well, I did have clues. I just didn't recognize them. And he said, well, you know, we found a signal for cancer. And, you know, my dad had cancer. I've got 2 uncles that have cancer. So it's in the back of my mind. And I know enough about gastrointestinal cancers that the first thought I had is, please don't say pancreatic. Just please don't say pancreatic. You know, say prostate cancer, because that's a little better. And he said it's pancreatic. And right at that time, and I was at my office, it's in my garage. I turned around, I got my car. And I'm driving home and on the radio, and I was thinking, well, it's probably a false positive, you know? So I was gonna like blow it off and wait until I, you know, get into the system and et cetera. And the thing about pancreatic cancer is you can't wait. It moves fast, right? And I got in my car and I'm driving home and Apple Music decided at that moment to play this old Johnny Cash song. And there's a line in it that says, sooner or later, God will cut you down. And I just got to thinking about that. It's like, is that a message, you know? And I got home and I got online and I ordered up an MRI from Prenuvo, which is right down the street from my house. I'm fortunate to live in Menlo Park. And at 6 a.m. the next morning, I went in, I got the scan, and a week later, they called me back and said, gee, you got a mass. And you need to get in and get a CT, PT, get all these tests. So I got into Stanford Health as quickly as I could, and they went through, you know, they did the biopsy. It's for pancreatic. It's you know, it's not fun, but anyway, they confirmed the diagnosis. And I started chemo like a couple weeks later. It was June 30th is when I got the call from Prenuvo. By the middle of July, I was in chemotherapy. Now, this hits you so hard and so fast, and nobody's prepared. You don't know what to do. Right? You just listen to the doctor. You just ask them to tell you what to do. And again, I don't have a medical background, so my thought process was, well, certainly they got this all figured out by now, right? Oh boy, they don't. There's a lot of decisions I had to make. You know, it's kind of interesting starting the chemo. Here's a little side note that these days they just install a port. You know, I'll carry that port the rest of my life. You know, they don't have to give you intravenous, they just install a port. And to tell you again, my mindset, I still was a little bit in denial. I went in for the port, and the anesthesiologist comes out and says, okay, we're gonna put you under. And I said, oh, no, you're not. I said, I'm busy. I can't go under anesthesia. And he argued with me for a while. And finally, the doctor came in and said, let me guess, you're a lawyer. You got to get back to the office and do hours, right? And I said, yes, that's right. That's exactly right. You nailed it. So, you know, but eventually I did appreciate the seriousness of what was going on. Started chemo in July. Spare you the details, but I'll tell you that they told me I was winning. My surgeon, who is the greatest guy in the world, he gave me his home phone number, and he told me, he said, look, you're winning, your tumor is shrinking. And then we did surgery, and then the pathologist is a different kind of doctor. They're more of a scientist. They'll examine the tissue, and they'll tell you if you really were winning or not. His opinion was, oh no, you are not winning. You're not winning at all. And I went back to my doctor, and this is when things really got difficult. Because I went in to see my oncologist, and the first thing he said is, well, gee, this is disappointing. Come on, I'm a lawyer. Words are my stock and trade. So disappointing. Like 49ers lost the Super Bowl. It's disappointing. Okay, disappointing, and I didn't know what to make of that. So I went to, another surgeon called me. Called me up, I didn't even call him. And he said, look, he says, I know that the oncologist wants you, to undergo a new kinds of chemo because the 3 months of chemo you took, as miserable as it was a waste of time and help. But I think the chemo worked, so I think you stay in the old chemo. It's like, well, come on, I mean, this is my decision, and I went back to the oncologist, and he says, well, I'm gonna take this to the tumor board, and they're gonna decide. And keep in mind, and by this time, I've been reading NIH papers and PubMed for 3 months. And I said, well, if I get a vote in this, I want you to change, because I think maybe what happened is the cancer just got resistant. And it got resistant. So if I get a vote, please change. And they did change to a different kind of chemo. And I did 3 more months of that. The way I found out they changed was when I walked into, the infusion center and I took a look at the bag and saw what the name was on the bag. It's so busy, they can't really communicate very well. Anyway, so I did 3 more months of that. And then we finished up. Now, that pathology report was really a game changer for me, because up till then, everybody said I was curable. Then I got the pathology report, nobody said that anymore. They were just telling me, how long I had. So I had to decide, like, which, really, I had to decide which chemo to take. And I talked to 4 different doctors, and I got 4 different answers on how much you should take 6 months of chemo now and have surgery. You should have that thing removed now and then do 6 months of chemo. You should do 2 and 4. You should do 4 months and then 2 months of chemo after surgery. 4 different answers. So I did what lawyers do. I compromised. I did 3 months of chemo, surgery, and another 3 months of chemo. And I think it was actually the right decision. The other decision I had to make is I talked to 2 different surgeons and got completely different opinions. Top guys, Stanford, UCSF. I got 2 completely different opinions on which type of surgery to have, because it's complicated, but there's different types of surgery. And one of the doctors, he said, look, he said, if you do it my way, I will double your chances of survival, right? Like right now, there's a 20% chance that you're gonna live through this. He said, but I will double your chance. I can make it 42%. I did not go with that guy, but I'll tell you why at some point. But I went with a different guy, and I'm glad I did. I think I made the right decision on that. Yeah, talked about that. Now, that was standard of care. So I do my 6 months of chemo, my surgery, I go back into the oncologist. We're done with chemo, because they, by the way, chemo, I don't want to get into this because you've all heard this before, but chemo is the one, most of the time the medicines you get are like the minimum effective dose. With chemo, it's the maximum tolerable dose, right? So as much as they can give you without killing you. And it turns out I can tolerate a lot. So they gave me a lot, and they kept cranking it up. And I've got Midwestern and stoicism, so I lied about how bad I felt as well. So they cranked it up even more. So it was pretty unpleasant, but I got through the full 6 months. And at the end of it, I said, okay, doc, now what do we do? Knowing how bad my prognosis is, now what do we do? And he said, well, we're just gonna sit and wait, and we're gonna scan you every 3 months. I said, well, wait, once it comes back, I mean, isn't that kind of game over? And he says, yeah, there's not much we can do once it comes back. That's all we're gonna do is sit and wait. It's like, well, that's not a good strategy, so I went out looking for alternatives. And I looked at all of this stuff, and I could talk for hours about all of it, and it took hours and hours to go through all this. But what I kind of settled on was a vaccine. And that's one of the things I want to mention here. I won't go through this whole slide. There's numerous types of immunotherapy, but that totally is the future of cancer care, is immunotherapy, I believe. And so what I settled on was what's called a neoantigen peptide vaccine. Now, you've been reading about mRNA vaccines in the papers, I'm sure. The Moderna has and Merck has, and I was reading about them too. And so I called up Moderna and I said, I want that mRNA vaccine. And they said, well, you got to get into a clinical trial. Well, 2% of cancer patients will get into a clinical trial. Now, I wasn't one of them. And I said, I'll tell you what, I will pay you for that vaccine. What do you want for it? No, you can't have it. It's gotta be in a trial. So I called Merck, same story. And, so I, just as a side note, to tell you, you know, where my head was, I found out that the founder of Moderna was speaking at a conference in Miami, an invite-only conference. And I said, you know what, there's no way I'm letting him get off the hook on this. I got on an airplane and I flew to Miami. I walked into the conference. They didn't even stop me. You know, I wasn't registered or anything. In fact, I even ate a box lunch there. And I waited and he gave his talk. And at the end of the talk, he says, any questions? And I said, I got a question. Oh yeah, I got a question for you. So why can't I have your cancer vaccine? And his answer was basically, well, don't blame me, blame the FDA. But I did not get that, but it's probably okay because I found a different one called a neoantigen peptide vaccine. And that again was another process and it would take a long time, but I'll just tell you, it takes 6 months to get this in the United States. I did this through a single patient protocol, also called compassionate use. And the thing is you still have to get an FDA approval. And I had to get my doctor to certify to the FDA that I was terminal, that I had only a matter of months to live, that they tried every standard therapy there is, nothing else was available, this is my only chance. And the doctor readily signed that. We sent that to the FDA. They went in to design and manufacture the vaccine. That was in February. I started in February. And the day before, so they got to make the vaccine, they got to ship it, they got to thaw it out. And the day before I'm about to get the vaccine, keep in mind, I've had 3 oncologists tell me now, this is my only chance, right? And it probably won't work, but it's my only chance. And the day before, I get a call from my advocate and he says, well, I got bad news. The FDA changed their mind. They don't think you should have this vaccine. Yeah, I'm not making this up. And I said, well, okay, fine, come up. And the next day I showed up at the doctor's office. I'm not sure what I was gonna do, but I knew I wasn't gonna leave without treatment. And as soon as he saw me, he says, don't worry, he says, don't worry, he says, there's no way you're not getting this vaccine after all you've been through. Now, I took a blood test in December of last year, and it showed tumor cells in my blood, which means there's a tumor in my body. I did 6 months of vaccine. I took that blood test last month, and it shows 0 tumor cells in my body. So I think the vaccine worked. And I really am anxious for the day that this becomes widely available and accessible, and not the second or third line therapy that you gotta fight like hell to get. And by the way, I had to go to Japan and started early, right? But the first line therapy, you know, because it's way more effective when your immune system's strong. It's less effective after your immune system's been destroyed by chemo. So anyhow, I could talk a lot about, you know, I went through every test in the world, you know, as I'm going along just to monitor this. Those are some of the tests. I want to get into that. As I said, I'm currently NED. I got another scan coming up in November, but based on my blood work, I'm pretty optimistic, you know, that, you know, I'll always be looking over my shoulder. But the thing about pancreatic cancer is that when it comes back fast. And, you know, and it's been 2 years since my diagnosis, so the doctors feel pretty good about it. Now, I do want to spend a couple minutes talking about what I learned from this and what I wish I know. So stay with me. So I said I had no symptoms, but I did have some clues. We were talking about inflammation. One of my clues was high CRP, they call it. That's a standard blood test. And I remember sitting in my doctor's office, and I had a friend who's a patient advocate. And I called her on the phone while I was sitting there, and I said, I'm here, they're taking my blood, what test should I get? And she said, and she gave me a long list. Well, one was CRP. Well, my CRP was high. And no reason, they couldn't just sit, and the doctor said, I don't know, you know, maybe it was those tequila shots you had last night, who knows? You know, through my life, I've had stomach pain that I thought was acid. I think now it's pancreatitis. My cholesterol, this is a weird one, just plummeted for no reason, just plummeted. That often happens in cancer patients. So many doctors will tell you that. Sudden spike in blood sugar while my weight went down. That almost always happens in pancreatic cancer. No doctor told me that. You know, these are all signs that nobody caught. And then there was a bunch of other stuff. And I'm really hopeful for people like you to go out and develop artificial intelligence and other systems that will pick this stuff up. Because, there are definite patterns. So, that's kind of the health and the medical stuff, just kind of, you gotta order the test, you gotta be really adamant about it, you gotta be assertive, and you gotta tell the doctor, to say, look, I wanna have these tests. Because, and if you don't know what they mean, I'll find someone who does know what they mean, because I kept getting, don't know, that's weird, your blood sugar's up, no idea. Well, now I know. Now, I do want to talk about the financial aspect of this, and nobody talks about this enough, but we have a real problem in this country, because I've not given a talk like this before ever, but I have told my story a lot, and I get some negative comments. I get people who say, well, you Silicon Valley elitists, you were able to get all these treatments that aren't available to the residents. You're absolutely right. I'm with you. I did get stuff that wouldn't be available to me if I were living in an Midwest, probably. But I think that that's a problem that we have to solve. I think that is really a problem that needs to be solved in this country, because there is a definite financial toxicity component to this. And I've gotten to know a lot of patients, a lot of cancer patients, and this is one of the main concerns: what this stuff costs and how little insurance is going to cover. So let me talk about that. I'm just going to go through a couple of the players here, and I sort of be negative, but I think it's important that people just understand what the environment's like when you get into it. Because my first thought was, well, gee, there's got to be a drug that'll cure this. And in fact, there's a big, I don't want to mention their name, but there's a big biotech in San Francisco that developed the vaccine that I was getting, and they dropped it. They just dropped the whole program. And I don't want to say they dropped it because there wasn't enough money in it, but that's what I was told at the JP Morgan conference. They said, look, we can make $1 million selling you chemo. We can make $10,000 selling you a vaccine. What do you think we're going to do? This came from the mouth of an industry executive. So just keep that in mind, when you decide who's on your side and who's not. And the insurance was the biggest eye opener, because I've been paying insurance premiums for 40 years, thinking my insurance company would be there for me when I needed them. And ultimately, they were part of the way. But boy, I had to fight for it. And I remember sitting in that infusion center, looking around at those people thinking, look, I do this for a living. And look at the battle I'm having with the insurance company. What chance do these people have? This guy can hardly walk out of here. He's going to get on the phone and argue with an insurance company? It's a real problem. And I don't have an answer for that. I'm just pointing out the issue. And people don't like me to mention this, but yeah, you have to second guess. You have to challenge your doctors, right? You have to get second opinions and third opinions. And I talked to, I got fifth opinions. So, and, if I had to, because the stakes are just too high. It's good being a skeptic sometimes. And then finally, the biggest problem I think in the whole system is what I've heard called consensus medicine. In fact, I don't know, any Peter Attia fans here? He just did a whole program, a whole podcast this week with a doctor on reforming the medical system and just how hard it is to get people to move off of old established dogmas. So it might be hard to get people to move from chemotherapy to immunotherapy. I don't know. I hope not. And then finally, don't get me started on the FDA, right? They were definitely my enemy. In fact, I've done a couple podcasts and they always edit out the part where I talk about the FDA. I'll tell you how I feel about them. And then, I do want to circle back just the health factors, because I kept asking my doctors, why did this happen to me? What caused this? It's like Al said, I thought I was healthy. I thought I had the healthiest lifestyle I could possibly be. And they kept saying, bad luck, or the somatic mutation theory of cancer, just luck of the draw. Well, I got to tell you, I think it was more than that. So I checked everything, after this was over. And all of those things, I come to find out I was doing everything a person would do if they were trying to get cancer. My diet, alcohol, mycotoxins, that's mold. I had mold in my coffee maker, and it's the carcinogenic kind, that I didn't know about. I had everything you would do, you know, my microbiome was all messed up. So anyway, I think I've straightened that out, but when people ask, what do you wish you knew then, more than now, this is the one thing. I wish I know more about health, and I prioritize my health these days. These are the resources. If anybody wants these slides, give me a card. I'm happy to send them to you so you can do your own research. Unfortunately, and people hate it when I tell them this, you have to do this. You have to do your own research. You have to be your own best advocate. You know, you just can't count on anybody else to advocate for you. You really need to be educated. I think we talked a little bit about metabolic factors. And here's some resources on alternative care. So I don't want to go over. I just want to say a couple words about advocacy. So here's where we are today. I mean, your chances of developing cancer, right? Look at that, 40%, right? 40%. This is a huge disease in this country. And, you know, half the people you know are going to have this. So we ought to be prepared. I wish I were. And then there's this one I put up because just look at the death rate for my cancer, pancreatic cancer has been increasing, How can that be? You know, I keep hearing that we're winning the war on cancer, but look at the chart. This is from the American Cancer Society. So I think, you know, I believe it. And then finally, I think the biggest thing we have in the battle against cancer is early detection, right? Because if anybody ever hears the words, you have cancer, the next thing you want to hear is we caught it early. That's the next thing you want to hear, because that's the cure. Once it goes to stage 4, it's much, much more difficult. So they caught mine relatively early. I got the Gallery test. It's a multi-cancer early detection program. There's others out there, of course. I got an MRI, a private MRI for pre-numo. There's others out there. And the FDA just recently approved the Guardant test. And more of these are going to come online as we go along. By the way, if the FDA approves it, then Medicare can cover it. That's why that's so important, right? Because you can go, you know, you can go to, I don't know, I went to Japan. You can go to another country and get all this stuff, not having to worry about it. But how many people can do that? We talked about the financial stuff. And currently, now that I'm on the other side of this, and my eyes have been open, and I felt like, you know, I should be, yeah, I think it was Lily Tomlin who said, someone should do something about this, you know, that someone's me. So that's what I thought, someone ought to do something about this. So I'm currently the Silicon Valley Advocacy Chair for the PanCAN, Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. I just met with Hannah Eshu's office. She's been a great supporter of cancer research and cancer funding. Just this morning, AACRS had their congressional update. There's several bills in Congress right now to fund research of cancer. And in fact, we're seeing Jimmy Panetta next week on the same issue. Grail, I'm very active with that company as one of their advocates. I'm on the board of Cancer Patient Lab. It's where patients get together and talk to other patients. And if we have more time, I can tell these stories, but I really credit them for giving me a lot, for telling me which drugs to stay away from. Well, I'll tell you one story. My immunologist was just adamant that I take a certain checkpoint inhibitor. But I had read that for a certain number of people, this could be really bad. And through Cancer Patient Lab, I started talking to patients who had this particular drug. And I found about half of them had adverse reactions. And they had the autoimmune disease. And I finally found a test. There's 1 in 100 people that will die from taking this drug. And I finally found a test, and guess what? I'm one of those 1 in 100. So I'm glad I found Cancer Patient Lab, found that test. And then I have my own group, cancerstartup.com. Because one of the things I did is I went out to my network, I talked to the VCs and the companies, and I said, what's out there that no one's heard about yet that might be a cure? And there is tons of stuff. It's amazing, the technologies that are out there. We're just not hearing about it. And it takes 12 to 15 years to get into the market mostly because of the FDA approval process. So there's stuff out there. I've heard so many times, especially Monday night, there's a doctor at Stanford, Dean Felcher, at an event. He's got a therapy targeting the MYC NYC oncogene that he believes is a cure for most cancers. And he's excited because 5 years from now, maybe people will be able to get it. So I'm giving some exposure to a lot of these companies. And then finally, I'm part of a cancer accelerator, same idea. We're taking technology startups and trying to give them some exposure. So I know I'm way over time, sorry about that. That's me, that's how you can contact me. Those are my websites, same questions. Yes, ma'am.
Ron, could you go back to the slide where there were different things you were doing that guaranteed you to get cancer, like the coffee maker? Could you give a little specific so that we could avoid some of those same things?
Well, let's start here because I skipped this. And by the way, let me set this up because the first thing I did as a cancer patient was I went out looking for survivors. And there's not many of them in pancreatic, I'll just be honest, but I did find the ones that there are. I remember the first guy I talked to, the first thing he said to me is, he said, well, you'll never buy another pair of shoes. You know, you just, you know, anyway. So, but I asked him, what did you do? You know, and I asked all these people, so I've kind of come up with some commonalities. And I think nutrition is just number one. And you'd be surprised, I mean, just look at the numbers. I could go on and on about nutrition, but I'm waging war on sugar and processed carbs, they put it that way, because that was my diet. And I just think it's a bad idea, you know? Exercise, and I talked to a lot of cancer patients, the ones that had recurrence, you know, the ones that had, by the way, a lot of cancer patients have more than one cancer. I heard that over and over again. They say, look, if you get this, you probably get other cancers. Well, that sounds like a systemic thing to me. Okay, exercise really super helps. In fact, there are 2 studies that say exercise, moderate exercise, will kill about 90% of circulating tumor cells, which is how cancer spreads. And cancer kills by spreading into vital organs. Supplements, I was deficient in selenium, magnesium, vitamin B, vitamin D. I bet most of the people in this room, because we're in Northern California, are deficient in vitamin D, and the RDA is really too low. So, you know, be careful about supplements. Alcohol, I know people don't like to hear this stuff, but you know, alcohol it's linked directly. There's such a strong correlation between alcohol and cancer that once I realized I haven't had a drink since my diagnosis, since June of 2022. And I never will. It's just too risky. Sugar we talked about, sleep. Did you know the effect sleep has in your immune system? See, I didn't sleep before. I pulled all-nighters at work, and you know, sleep was a low priority thing. Stress, you know, I was in about as high a stress a job as you can imagine. All these things are contributors. What was the other one I had? I think, and then this one. Okay, microbiome. That's just, this is just established now. This is just scientific fact that having a healthy microbiome improves your immune system, and your immune system is your first line of defense against cancer.
What is microbiome?
Microbiome, okay, basically, yeah, to my mind, it's the bacteria that live in your stomach and in your system. And if you eat a lot of vegetables, like we have on that counter back there, like broccoli and cauliflower, that feeds the microbiome, and it feeds the good bacteria in your gut. If you take a lot of antibiotics, well, that's a bad thing, you know, that kills your microbiome. And having a healthy microbiome is just clearly linked to a lot of diseases. Mycotoxins is mold. And like I said, I found it in my coffee maker because I had a mold inspector come in and look at everything. But also be careful what you eat, because and I have the carcinogenic kind. Be careful because it's in old coffee, it's in beans and grains that might sit on a shelf, stuff like that. Heavy metals, there's a correlation, but I think it's a little weaker. With cancer metals, but of course I have that. Pathogens, H. pylori is
Explain metal.
heavy metal like mercury, right?
Oh,
Stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, it's something everyone should get tested. Most people, everyone's walking around some level of metals. Well, related to that, I didn't put microplastics on here because we all got that, you know, but there's a link now. There's a correlation to what I mean by microplastics, the little tiny plastic molecules that are in our water now, they're in our food, they're in everything, they're in our body, and they damage cells. And pathogens, just pylori is one that most people have. And there's a clear link between pancreatic cancer and H. pylori. Here's an interesting one. I get scans called DEXA scan, and they will look at the fat around your organs. Very clear correlation between fat around your organs, not the skeletal subcutaneous fat, but the fat around your organs. Very clear correlation between fat around your organs. It causes inflammation, and that's where cancer lives. Vitamins and minerals, it's easy to check in the blood. It's the easiest thing in the world to correct. I have a client named Athletic Greens. Take their product, it'll correct that overnight. And then just environmental factors, that's the microplastics. Does everybody know about PFAS, forever chemicals? I threw out all my pots and pans because there were no stick. And in fact, there's a warning on them in California now, because there's no stick stuff on pots and pans. It might be a PFAS, a forever chemical. They call them forever chemicals because they're dangerous and they get into your tissue and they stay there. And then we go back to that inflammation problem. So, by the way, why is all this important? It's because all of this, I feel like, and this is where I'm going way off the reservation here, I feel like cancer is a mitochondrial disease. And all of these affect your cell, the cell mechanism. All of it makes the cell. So I don't think it's a mutation disease. I think it starts here by messing up the mitochondria in the cell, which then leads to the mutations. And we could talk for hours as to why I think that. And I may be completely wrong on that, but one thing I am right about is that these are all factors. There's no doubt about it. Correlation is clear.
So we are past the end of our meeting time. Mr. Wood, would you be available afterwards? There's still a few questions that maybe you can answer offline. If you're
I
available.
did talk to one. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay.
Presentation. Send it to me.
I think so.
You got it. I don't do cards. Well, I have.
Thank you. You appreciate that. So I got his email there. So what's your email?
Oh, it's in a lot of, it's Karma Kardashian. It'll be in Rotary stuff.
Not anymore.
Happy birthday, Roger. Happy birthday to you.
Not